morning and welcome to another edition of our Dragon's Maze set review. I am here with Brad Nelson. I am Evan Irwin. Today we're going to talk about the red cards, all the Boros cards, and all the Izzet cards. We are going to start today with all the guilds.
And this card is so bad.
It's so bad.
It's terrible.
It's just so beautifully bad. It's just terrible.
It's
just so
terrible.
terrible.
I just want to
Don't play with this thing. It's
cheeks
freaking
and then
bad.
rip it up and throw it.
The art's cute.
Yeah,
they
the
didn't
art's
forget the
fine.
Demir symbol this time.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Like I said, I just wish I had a B in front of it. It could be the ball for the guild. Ball.
Yeah.
It's bad. We don't talk about it. Clear a path. Get him away.
I mean, yeah, sure. But I mean, there's not that many defenders, but the cool thing about all the defenders is they have these cool abilities now, so it's actually relevant removal.
It's relevant removal versus interesting defenders. Now I'm sure the peanut gallery will tell us exactly which defenders are the best ones ever. But ultimately, this card is incredibly narrow. To earn a slot in your deck to just destroy a defender if they have one, if it's on the battlefield.
I don't think they wanted to do this, and that's why they didn't. But I feel like this for flavorish plus like set, it would have been a cool LD spell to be 2 colorless red, destroy target defender, or gate. Clear a path because like the gates are kind of defending. They're not really in the magic sense, but they're gates.
Yeah. But you can't Stone Rain at 3 mana.
But it's not Stone Rain. It's kill a gate.
Stone Rain at 3 mana. In a set that has a gate in every pack, Stone Rain at 3 mana is not a fair situation. And to kill them, I would have knock out their other color, all their color fixing.
Yeah, I understand.
Right. There was this really interesting debate on Twitter about why are there no signets in Dragon's Maze or in the block entire. And I'll wait a little bit on this for the clue stones. But there's a few interesting points I want to talk about in regards to signets in this block versus no signets when we get to the clue stones at the end of tomorrow's
Why
review.
didn't they bring back the Kuros too?
I will talk about that as well, won't we? Ultimately, Clear a Path is just super narrow, is at best a sideboard card in a limited deck against
You
some
mean
deck
at
that
worst
has,
a sideboard card? At
best,
yeah.
right? Sorry, I'm sorry. At best, a sideboard card that might possibly come in against something.
No.
It's bad.
It's bad.
Bad. Maze Rusher.
This card is sweet. I like
He's
that
Russian.
it gets haste. The 3 toughness isn't great for itself, but and it's not going to have that impact like the blue version where it's it gives your other guys a visual kind of haste, but your guys are already in play. So it does give all your multicolor cards after haste, but that's not that big of a thing.
That's the problem, right? At least the other ones that we've talked about so far, they're given Death Touch, and they're given Vigilance, and they're given Flying. All of these things happen immediately and make an immediate impact on the game, and this is actually the ability that makes the impact on the other half of the game.
Yeah.
Everything that happens after Maze Rusher, everything that happens after you try to attack with it and they might kill it, or after you try to untap with a 6 mana, or with a 6 mana 6/3. I mean, okay. So what were you doing before you played the 6 mana 6/3 that made you not play them before?
And that's why this card is bad, because he just rushed through the maze, didn't figure it all out correctly.
Just took all the right turns.
Yeah.
Possibility Storm. Big wall of text. Crazy things are happening.
TLDR.
Meh.
Yeah, no clue what this card
TLDR. Curse of Exhaustion means that your opponent never plays a spell.
is. Oh, is that really what it means?
Well, basically, you try to cast a spell, it exiles it, and so whatever type of spell that was, you're going to mill your deck until you find the same type of spell and then play it. So Curse of Exhaustion says, oh, you played a spell this turn, so the next one that you reveal to try to cast, oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
No, not in Possibility Storm's house.
Yeah, cool 2-card combo that's never going to happen. We haven't seen those before.
Hey, it's 4 and 5 mana.
Lock you out. That's actually maybe possible. That could happen.
It probably not.
No.
It's super cute. This is a card that, is made for a casual player.
Yep.
It's going to make a fun time at your kitchen table, and that's all some of these crazy, wacky red cards. That's all they need to do.
I just think he's a little too narrow-minded because he's got 2 skulls and 2 dragons when they should all just be different things.
They should be different things. He's some imagination.
Yeah, he's tunnel visioned.
And you need imagination to make this card sweet.
Yeah.
Punish the enemy. I will punish.
This is good. It's a fixed Searing Blaze or whatever it was.
Yep,
Yeah.
Searing Blaze that is correctly costed, maybe?
Yeah, this one is pretty correctly costed. I think dealing 3 and dealing 3 to a player is fine.
I mean, you basically can be able to put Searing Blaze and then you can look at punish the enemy, and you can go, huh, what happened in Magic over the past few years?
Yeah.
One of these things is worse than the other. But ultimately, they're still great spells.
Yeah.
Still very powerful, and like obviously you're going to play the crap out of this in Limited. But Syrian Blaze was 100% ready for Constructed, whereas this is 100% not.
This is like a very good card in the aggressive decks where it's almost a 2-for-1 because dealing 3 to your opponent it sometimes can give you like the ability to kill him a turn earlier, not giving him extra cards. So
right. Super sweet spell Unlimited, no doubt about it. Riot Piker, I feel like there was a point in time where this card was 1 red mana.
Really?
Yep. And it was too good. Now, Tattermunge Maniac was a card. And you know, what I liked about, back when Mike Flores previewed Tattermunge Maniac, one of the notes from R&D when they included it in his email was, yes, it's real. Because at the time, you know, a green 2/1, you know, just a green mana 2/1 or a red mana 2/1 was like unbelievable
Good,
and unheard of, and no one had ever done it in years, and it was terrible. It was bad in Constructed, essentially. It made a little bit of a splash, but it got bad pretty quick. And I feel like Riot Piker is a very similar spin on that type of card. It's just at 1 red mana, it's too good, and at red and a colorless, it's too bad.
Yeah, I mean, this is just a limited card. It's not good enough for Constructed. And yeah, if it was red, the mono-red decks would be so good, it would be unbeatable. Especially being a first striker. Like, who cares if it attacks each turn? It's hard to block.
Right, that's the key. And that's the problem with, you know, a Tattermunge Maniac. Your opponent would play a, you know, a an Augur of Bolas, or a the blue-white guy from Ravnica, the Azorius guy, I can't remember right now. You know what I'm talking about, the 1/3, with like if you used a blue or used a white to cast him.
Oh, Cortazar.
Yes, Cortazar, thank you. You would play Cortazar back then. You played Cortazar versus Tattermunge Maniac. And today you play Augur of Bolas versus this thing, and they're both embarrassing situations. So ultimately, I like Riot Piker as a limited, you know, aggro guy, but he's kind of bad in that regard because, you know, once they have a 3/3 and there's infinite 3/3 centaurs and there's infinite Pillarfield Oxes.
I think the next card is going to solve that. It might not be the next card. It's going to be a while, but
it ain't going to be the next card. But we're going to get there because our next card is Smelt Ward Gatekeepers. We got some Smelt going on.
Yeah, no, I think this card is really sweet. It does do some cool things, just jabbing your opponent for a couple extra points of damage. But the great thing about Smelt Ward Gatekeepers compared to the other ones is this one you'll wait on. You'll sit in hand, you'll wait to get 2 gates later on in the game because it is just a 4-mana threat and that comes with a body. And being able to steal a more relevant creature, it has a little bit more play to it. And like that's the interesting thing about Magic these days is as time goes on, the green, white aggro decks and the red decks are getting more play than the blue decks. It seems like I think it's more difficult to play these cards than it is the you know, detain that attack.
Right. I think one of the ways to figure out how good this card is, Threaten is a fine card. Threaten is a playable card. But if Threaten said, kicker, 1 colorless, put a 2/4 into play, you know, that's how good this card is.
Yeah.
It's the same spell, just with a 2/4. Now, yes, it has a requirement, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, in the environment in which you're going to be playing this card, you're able to wait for it because it's great, and you're able to always trigger it because you should have guild gates.
Yeah. So it's good in the early game when you don't have gates. It's great in the late game when you finally draw it and you do have gates. It does more than the other one, so I like it.
I like it a whole lot. That whole cycle is sweet. Now, Boros Mastiff is here. Now, this is a white card, but it's in Boros, it has the Boros insignia, so here we are. You're going to work pretty hard for that 2-life.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit too much work. I just feel like he's like the mascot.
He's just a bear.
Yeah.
I think if you just think of him as a 2-mana 2/2 that sometimes has a random upside, you're going to get a lot more value out of him. You know, the ability to just like play him on turn 2 and just begin attacking. Don't worry about that battalion. You know, triggering a battalion. I want to get maximum value out of this 2/2. No, you don't. You just play a grizzly bear and you just attack them to death.
And the 2-life comes sometimes will be relevant in racing, but that's about it. I do agree. It's just a bear, and bears are good and limited,
right?
Especially when it's going to help your other battalion. He has his own like extra value battalion.
Right. He does, and that's really nice. But at the same time, you need something on curve, you need something to do on turn 2, and you just want to bash. So do not hold back with this card because you're trying to trigger battalion when you could actually just get in and maybe trade for a 3-drop or a 4-drop or higher, because that's really good versus gaining 2-life randomly. Blaze Commando, this card is really interesting.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Oh man, I think all of a sudden all the Johnnies are just like, whoa, this means if I can, like, what was the retrace burn spell?
Oh yeah,
I can't remember the exact name of it, but there is one red to like deal 1 damage.
Jab flame or something.
Yeah,
flame jab.
Flame jab. Yeah, you're just like flame jab, discard flame jab, make guys flame jab, make guys. It's very John.
I just want to make sure if you Realist Fury, 3 different targets, it only triggers once, right? If the smell deals damage.
Right. When it's the better way, I think the rules advisors mentioned was that if deals damage is like the magical phrase, because there's some spells that say, deal 1 damage to this, deal 1 damage to that, deal 1 blah blah. So that deal X damage, that's the phrase you're looking for to trigger this thing. And no doubt about it, it's got some potential, but I feel like it's with a lot of Johnny cards. It's really exciting in its possibility.
Well, the cool thing about this card is in limited though, it's going to be very good because it's got a big body, but it can help you get to your battalion by just killing guys, and it plays defense really well. Like any instant speed burn, like you Izzet charm something, get 2 tokens, block, hit your battalion next turn. Like it's a cool spell.
Deals damage is so sweet.
Yeah.
Because it's whether you hit a creature, whether you hit a player, whether you even kill that creature, it doesn't even matter.
And Fire Axe.
I like this card. This card is so sweet. And limited, it's absolute bomb. Unfortunately, it's really cute. It's not good enough for constructed. No. But I think a lot of Johnnies at the kitchen table to figure out just the right way to deal lots of damage, in repeatable ways through instants and sorceries is going to love this thing. Istracon Scepter players all over are just like, yeah.
I get all the tokens.
Card is sick. Boros Battle Shaper has some awesome artwork. I love that artwork.
It is sweet artwork, but like,
you're going to go over and attack, son, and you're going to block.
Yeah,
you ain't.
The flavor's sweet, or the flavor text is sweet, but like, I hate when my opponent gets to tell me what I'm going to do. They can kill me, they can Tendrils of Agony me for 20, I don't care. But if they're going to be like,
you're going to make a bad decision right now.
Yeah, this is your bad decision. You're going to attack with that. And I'm going to block with this. Oh. And that can't block or attack, but that does have to.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just so sad.
Sadness, but a 7 mana 5/5, like this is the creature that you want to open in sealed. This is absolutely at the top of a curve of a draft deck. It's kind of pushing it at 7 mana. It depends on the speed of the format.
I don't know. I mean, the ability happens right away, so that's cool.
The fact that you can play it and use it immediately, that's a sick one. And ultimately, I think it's an all-around really sweet limited card.
Oh, yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. I like it.
I like it a lot. Again, that artwork is, beautiful.
Speaking of good artwork.
Hey-yo, Gleam of Battle, get ya.
It's cool. It's a little overcosted to be that.
It's a little overcosted, but it's uncommon.
Yeah.
That's weird. I feel like this would have been a cheaper or a more color-intensive spell had it been rare or mythic, of course. Like you could have done this at mythic and maybe like white, red, or something, super intensive. It would have been insanely powerful.
Yeah,
but regardless, this type of effect, I don't think you want to be powerful. It is kind of marginal by the time you get to 6 mana.
I think it is a little bit, but it still does some cool things. Like your Sky Knight Legionnaires start going to 3, 4, 5.
Right.
Like the games get over really quickly if this works, and it does allow you to just like attack with a couple guys and keep guys defense, and then like switch them if like something weird happens. Like,
Vigilance works great with this.
Yes, Vigilance.
Like the 1/5 blue-white flyer that we saw that pumps your guys. Like this, get you. It's
trigger,
a 2/6.
trigger.
Get you. It's a 3/7.
That 1/2 punch seems really gross.
Woo!
Like play that, tag. All your guys
curve.
get +2. Yeah.
Right. On curve is turn 5 1/5 flyer, turn 6 Gleam.
All right.
Battle.
Yep. All aboard. We're on Magic Christmas Land now.
Toot toot, boys. We're on our way. Ultimately, Gleam of Battle.
It's a mediocre limited card.
It's a mediocre limited card. Legion's Initiative. Oh, I love this thing.
I saw this card and I knew. Okay, so this is the kind of card. This is Resto Angel. It's like I know it's good. I know what it does, but I don't know what it can potentially do.
I know exactly what it can do. It can go down turn 2, and down turn 3 comes Boros Reckoner as a 4/4.
Yeah.
Get you, son.
I mean, but like all the combat, like it's mind blowing what it can do in combat. For one, like sure, combos with Boros Reckoner, it's really good with Assemble the Legions.
Okay.
But like the cool things is like you can block all their guys, bounce your guys out, and get them for combat. You can, in the middle of the game, if like you play a big monster and have a couple free mana, and you can like remove them all during your main phase 1, they come back and it gains haste now.
Yes.
The creature gains haste. You can attack and have defense. You can throw everything, and get all your battalion triggers if like get some damage in, and then like do defense. It stops Supreme Verdict. It stops Terminus. Like it's very powerful. It's weird. Like the
And
only
it even
problem
has like a weird combo sort of effect, you know, like with
Yeah.
the removing and then everybody comes, the ghost way type, you know,
Yep.
everybody bounces, what happens?
Now, I understand, and you're going to go, Brad, you're crazy, but I actually think this card is a little underpowered. I feel like it should have been red creature control get +1/+1 and white creature control get +1/+1. I honestly do. Magic cards are good.
What?
Yeah, it should be
It
double
couldn't
Anthem.
be any cheaper. It literally, they made it as cheap as it possibly
It could have
be.
been red-white hybrid. No, but honestly, I think like the white creatures not being able to get the extra power when white creatures are more powerful in standard is like what's going to like really hinder this card from being that.
It's a
playable.
little awkward that I can't, you know, play red, white, black, and this doesn't pump my Lingering Souls tokens
Yeah.
in the right way.
Yeah.
Like, I want it to pump my Lingering Souls tokens in the right way, because if I have to trigger it, it's going to kill my Lingering Souls tokens, but I'm okay. Like, you know, you have Big Naya, where instead you're blinking out Thrag Tusks and the Restoration Angels, you know.
Yeah.
You have a lot of flexibility in sort of red, white, black. To do enter the battlefield, anything. This is a card that is full of potential, and that's the cards I like the most.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes. I think it's not going to go as far just because the Lingering Souls tokens don't get pumped. But
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's kind of bad. But the
I
fact
guess
that,
I guess we're just going to have to change it to the red to white creatures get +1/+0. So then it's a Glorious Anthem.
yeah.
We're just going to have to mind bend it again.
With your Cypher spell, this guy. I like Legion's Initiative a lot, though. I don't think, unfortunately, it's really good. I don't know. It should be good and limited, right? You're going to trigger all your enter the battlefield stuff.
it's going to be good and
You're
limited.
going to pump all your guys. That's fine.
And the thing is that like recycles all your champions too, so all your champions get bigger too. So like that's pretty cool when you remove everything from the game.
Right.
It lets all your like lightning maulers, like you can play a guy, like you can block, remove them all from the street verdict, play a guy, bring him back. The lightning mauler gives that guy haste now. Like it does some cool things. It does work.
It does some sweet things. No, particularly in constructed, I think it's absolutely awesome. Limited, it's one of those weird things where you're going to open a pack, and this is going to be your rare. It's not really a first pickable rare. I feel like you're going to see like a sweet uncommon, like the hexproof flyer. I'd rather have over this guy.
No, I'd rather have this and then just like win the draft and then sell it. Give me
Value. Tajik.
Blade of the Legion.
He was slicing dice your color fries.
He gets in front of everyone and attacks. I think this card's really sweet.
I think this card is awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Falcon Resurrection Crab, yeah, Falcon Resurrection Crab would not be that good if it didn't have
The
the
indestructible
ability
option.
to be indestructible. Yeah, and this card can just become a 7/7 when it attacks. Like it blocks whatever on the ground. Like you're a Boros deck and you're like, oh, I can't attack right now, but the strike does attack me now. No, you just block it. You get attack. Like
It doesn't matter. That's the thing. It's like, you know, and I brought it up on the Magic Show where, you know, I'm old. I lived through Champions of Kamigawa where Indestructible was literally debuted, and they made a 7-mana 3/3 that if blocked became a 7/7 or an 8/8 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because you're never going to block it.
Yeah.
Whereas Tajik, you want to attack, and if you just attack, which you're going to anyway, he gets ridiculously huge.
yeah,
I can't imagine a world where this is bad. They took Chomano and made him like even way better than expected.
Well, and
Chomano and Conda and like
and he's like he's on
Wow.
curve and he's on the important curve turn of you can play this into wrath effects.
Right.
Which is really sweet. So I do like that part of it. I don't know if it fits in like a blitz like top end of the curve.
yeah, it feels more mid-range
Yeah.
because it's a 4-mana guy. You want to be able to hit 4 mana on turn 4, which makes you play more lands, which means that you're not going to be as aggressive. But again, it might also you know, trigger people playing more Terminus than they are today. A lot of times today is just Supreme Verdict is just the expected
And that's the problem. Like
sorcery that you're going to play.
Terminus, you sometimes don't get to 6 mana.
Right.
You always have to miracle. Like I think the best card in the format is Terminus if it's always activated on turn 3.
Sure.
You know, you always miracle. If it's a 9th card down, it's just like the best card ever.
Yep.
But other than that, like Terminus is just slow. So I think this guy does have a really good chance. I think he'll break through the. It'll be good after Innistrad rotation. I think it'll be good before that.
I agree. I think he's going to be good basically immediately. I think a
Yeah.
lot of people are really discounting this card in ways that doesn't make a lot of sense to me because, wow.
Plus with the initiative, he is a 3/3 immediately too, which is he blocks Strike Tusk. He gets through Strike Tusk even without Battalion if you have Legion's Initiate, or I think that's what the card was called.
Yeah.
The last one.
Yeah, Legions. Legion's initiative,
Initiative,
for
yeah.
sure. So, but Tajik, for me, like, the fact that this guy has a 2/2 is really important. Like, it's better for him to be a 2/2 that gets +5/+5 than a 1/1 that gets +6/+6.
Yes.
Because Tragic Slip exists.
Yes.
And that means this card is way, way more
And
awesome.
I mean, as a Aristocrats fan now, I don't really care how big the creature is. As long as it's not a 14/14, it's dying to a slip. It doesn't matter. Laws. Card's too good.
Viashino First Blade. Now, my buddy he has a common cube, and he was just like, oh, Viashino First Blade. Ooh, that's a sweet one. And I'm like,
I usually think it's pretty sweet. Like, it attacks as a 4-power creature right away. It's like, it triggers your, like, 1-drop and 2-drop battalions, and, like, when you're curving and limited.
it does. It's because it's a triggered effect. It won't help your evolved creatures, which is unfortunate.
No. Well, yeah, it won't help your evolved creatures, but, like, that doesn't matter. It's important that it's a haste creature that is bigger. Like, you don't want to just make another Skylight Legionnaire. That's boring.
And I understand that.
But it's a haste creature that will defend itself for that first turn. Like, that's the problem with some haste creatures in these reds, is, like, you can't protect it that turn. You can't play one of your spells to help it because you're casting it. But he protects himself that first turn, then your job is to keep him alive after that.
Right. So if you take a look at sort of like what if there were different numbers, because I actually think that's kind of an interesting way to look at cards, is if Viashino First Blade was a 1/1 flyer that had the exact same words, was still haste, still got +2/+2 when into the battlefield, would it be better?
No.
Or worse?
It would be worse. I like the 4 power that it has right away. I like that it's a 2/2 on the ground. I think 2/2s are really good. Like, what if the game's going in the opposite direction? You want to block with it.
It's still a Grey Ogre.
Yeah, it's still a Grey Ogre, and it's only 3 mana, and it attack. Being able to attack for 4 with a guy on turn 3 is really good and limited, especially if it hits your battalion. Like, you Boros Elite, you play the Skyjack, and now you're like, well, now I just get to attack you for 10 on turn 3 limited. That's a lot of damage.
That's a sweet amount of damage. And the other half of me goes like, but I think my problem is that I feel like, in my mind, I think of all the other scenarios where it's not on turn 3, it's not on your curve, and you're just like, like they have a 5/5 or they have a 5 toughness defender, and you're like, wish this card had, evasion. We should have something else. Blah blah blah. It's a fine card. Now, War Leaders Helix, we're back. Lightning Helix, ladies and gentlemen.
Lightning Helix
too good.
Took some time off, got a little fatter, got a little slower.
This is the AARP version of Lightning Helix. No offense. But War Leaders Helix by itself, I feel, again, I brought this up because of Sire of Insanity. I think that's where you want to see that type of play.
So the benefits of Helix is, like a lot of people say, in the mid game against the aggressive decks, you can kill a guy, you gain that life, so it's like a fog. It deals with a guy, you can blow him out, you can snap, do this, it kills Restoration Angel, kills Sire of Insanity. The problem I have with that is I want to be curving into really good things, and I want my removal to help, like, fit the little gaps when I'm trying to
Doesn't this fit turn 4, so you gain
no,
life and you're not getting crushed?
It curves. Removal is curving. So you have to put this in a removal slot in a deck that still has win conditions, still has card advantage.
Sure.
But now you're not as flexible. Like, the removal, I want to be flexible. I want it to cost 1 and 2 to go along with Think Twice, Flashback, Syrian Spear, Augur, Syrian Spear on those turns. And that's what removal does, is it fills the gaps. That's why the new Agony Warp, I can't remember, Warped Physique or something.
Yeah, Twisted
something, is really good because it costs 2. And, like, War Leaders Helix does deal 4 damage, does gain 4 life, but I don't want my removal to curve. So, like, you have to put it in a slot, and now what if you get stuck on 3? You want your removal to be flexible. This is not a flexible Magic card.
Sure. I mean, it's basically the difference of when Tribute to Hunger was a card and was played, and then Devour Flesh came out, and even though it's a worse card in that the person who has the creature gains the life, it sees a lot more play than Tribute to Hunger did, just because it's less mana. And you're able to sort of piggyback it onto other spells or whatever.
And when you need the effect, you need it now.
Sure. Now, my issue is basically at the same time, War Leaders Helix, it's still a non-zero amount of life. I mean, that's still a big chunk of life.
Oh, yeah.
And ultimately, it deals with some of the bigger problems in the format, which are like Resto and Sire, because those are still things that you need to deal with.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I like that Blue White Red has an answer for that, and I do like that the life gain is pretty relevant in a lot of situations against the aggressive decks.
Right.
But I feel like you have to, like, trim on creatures and trim on card draw for this card, because you can't just change your removal package and add this card, because you still need to curve. Like, that's just something. If you're on the draw, like, say you have a Syrian Spear and now you replace it with a Helix, and you draw that instead of your other removal, and your opponent's on the play playing Blitz. That Searing Spear saves you in the
Or
game.
your opponent's going to playing Rakdos where they have Cackler and the Jester, and you're
Yeah,
just like,
you need that spear, yeah.
you're like, I really want like Pillar of Flame or anything here that is actually castable. Now, this sort of brings me to my point about the set entirely, which is I feel like Control got the best creature with Aetherling, and they didn't get much else, and they didn't get a really great removal spell. Like, if this is your great Control removal spell, it's 4 mana. Like,
well, I mean, they did. They got the Warp Physique or the blue-black removal. Yeah, that
fair enough, which is good, and it's going to be a fine card. It's like, but, you know, like, I feel like, you know, where's that Path to Exile? Where is that Answers Everything card where this isn't it because it's expensive, the other isn't it because it has the conditional, you know, which isn't too bad, but it is conditional. And, you know, it feels like aggro got all of these insane tools, all of these really sweet creatures that are super cheap, and, like, Control doesn't really have a lot on the other end of it.
Well, do you know why?
Because no one likes Control?
Well, it's not that. It's just like you watch the videos. I watch STG Live when I'm not at the tournaments myself, and it's like, so this guy's at 46, and these Sphinxes revving. Oh, and that guy just played a third. Oh, God,
he's activating the Drown Yard. He's activating the Drown Yard.
Yeah, it's just like, that's what Magic is sometimes, and, like, you never want that to be, like, too popular. You know, you don't want... like,
you want to make them work for the Control decks.
Yeah, and the aggro decks, you want your players to just be able to do things. So, like, that's where it's at. I think...
Lord knows Cackler and the Jester, you're doing things.
Yeah, exactly. and that's fun, and that's fast, and that's really impactful Magic, and I like that. And Siren Sanity is the same thing. It's going to be exciting games. Like, you only get 2 turns, pressure's on.
Right.
You know, you like, and that's the cool thing about that card to me, is like, I'm going to be watching, we're going to watch coverage, right? And someone's going to be like, drowning, and Sphinx's Rev, I got 7. It's like, oops, I couldn't stop the Sire. Bam! Both players top deck mode. You know, it's so much more pressure.
Right,
yeah.
right. Which is why Avacyn Restored was great in some ways, in that it brought an incredible amount of excitement to the top of your deck. And that was another reason I love Zendikar so much, was the same thing. You know, is there a land? I've never in my life hoped for a land on top of my deck until that set came around, which is why I thought it was so freaking brilliant. So I understand and I agree, but I feel like there's a removal spell that might have just like nixed or got, you know, this was literally Lightning Helix and they just nerfed it or whatever. Regardless, let's move on to Weapon Search. This card is sweet.
This is
actually, I think secretly one of the really good cards in the set.
No, same here. I think this is one of the best cards in the set. It's so good in combat. Like, so we've had things like Dino Charge. That's like laughably bad compared to this card, and that card's seen block play. But what Weapon Surge does that's so interesting is it can be an offensive and defensive spell in limited, but even if you look at constructed, it's like you attack with all these like Burning Tree Emissaries and these Boros Elites and Experiment ones, like a Blitz deck, right? Into all these green monsters on defense, and usually we need frontline magic to get through all this stuff. Well, now Weapon Surge is a cheap 1 mana defensive answer, as well as just a blowout on the aggressive.
Just for 2 mana.
Just for 2 mana, and I think this card is going to see a lot of play. It's going to be very good and limited. It's very difficult to play around. Giving your entire team First Strike is dangerous. I think this is
really
yeah. I think this is going to be a pushed card. I think it's going to go best in the Brozov decks, just because like. You have and it's just best there because like they're defensive. You bring the game to you,
right?
And so they attack, and then you just like blow them out with like all your guys having First Strike.
Yeah, I was researching a little bit on this card because I read it and I was just like, you know, that feels really good. You know, that feels like really powerful. Like, let's look at like some old cards that did similar things. And the further back you got, the more expensive this type of effect got, and the closer you got to today, the cheaper it got, to the point where now, I mean,
it can't go anywhere from here. This
they
is just
literally
broken.
can't make it any cheaper, and it really impacts all of combat moving forward.
This is a change. Like, this is the best version of the card, and it's very good.
It's really good. Limited and possibly constructed.
Yeah.
Blast of Genius. Speaking
So what is with
really
this card?
good.
Everyone thinks this card is really good. Now, you have to explain it to me, because I thought this was just another boring Magic card, but everyone's talking about it.
2 cards that make this card awesome.
Okay.
Blasphemous Act.
All right.
Catch and Release. Both deal 9 damage. Both go in the exact deck this would go into, and both deal a stupidly amount. I mean, like 6 mana to draw 3 cards, and like, oh, 9 you. Like, That's a thing. That's a big thing.
Maybe we can like.
That's the part where, like, when Boros Reckoner was first unveiled, and I saw like the first deck list that used Blasphemous Act and Boros Reckoner, we're like, lol, like, isn't this cute? Isn't this nice? So I don't do that anymore. When someone says Blasphemous Genius, Blasphemous Act, and Catch Release, I'm like, oh God.
Yeah. I mean,
this card is scary.
And I'm going into a Block Pro Tour, and I'm working with Team SCG, and they're not afraid to play Goblin Electromancer even in Modern. So maybe.
I'm just saying, man, like, this card has sweet, sweet potential. Now, you do choose the creature or player before you draw the cards. That may be a thing. But the fact that Blasphemous Act and Catch Release are so good,
the weird thing is,
it's
like,
worth it.
You put it on a creature, and then they, like, remove their creature. Like, they play the blue-white 2/2 that bounces a guy. That means you don't get to draw any cards anymore, right?
Well, because you're choosing the target. Yeah, I mean, it's going to go on. It's going to go on the stack in some form or fashion. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to go on the stack as to what their target is, and they can blink it. But
yeah, that
for me, again, like, this was literally one of the first cards that, like, Chapin started brewing on. He was just like, I think this card is sweet, and then next thing I know, Jerry's like, yeah, man, that card could be pretty good. It's got like Blasphemous Act and Catch Release. I'm like, okay.
Just find all the ways to make Blasphemous Act deal damage to your opponent. Like,
awesome.
We can Reckoner. We can do this.
So good. So good. Dragon Shift. Now talk about flavor.
Yeah, this card's pretty sweet.
This, like, in terms of like Form of the Dragon and Day of the Dragons, this goes right into that type of thing.
The overload feels correct, even though it seems a little bit too overcosted, but it still is great. Like, I don't like Dragon Shift feels like a card that you want to go with Lingering Souls, but getting to 3 blue, blue, red, red seems difficult. Well, I don't really know how you're going to get a bunch of creatures into play if you're playing Izzet.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think for me this is just a casual card, and it's going to be terrific and limited. It's going to be absolutely ridiculous and sealed. Like, this is what I want if I choose the Izzet Guild, during the pre-release, because this card just ends games. You just get yourself in a position where you have a bunch of dudes versus a bunch of dudes. I Dragon Shift them, and you're dead.
Yeah, no.
The end. And I think that's cool. I think the flavor of I turn all my guys into dragons, everything becomes dragons, is super awesome for a ton of players.
So what I'm going to have to do with this card is, before the pre-release, I'm going to have to go get, do you watch Game of Thrones?
I haven't seen the latest season, so
okay,
don't spoil it.
I'm not spoiling anything, but it just started up again. I'm just going to go get like a little gif of Khaleesi's like screaming, "Where are my dragons?"
Nice.
And then I'll play it as I try to drop deck it. I'm just like,
where are my dragons? There they are! Ah! But then you'll lose. Awesome. Flux Charger. I love me a freaking crazy Izzet power switching thingy.
The power switching cards have always performed much better than they originally looked.
Sure.
Like on paper they look terrible, but they always were good. Like, so you have this 1/5 in the air.
This has evasion.
Yeah, it has evasion. Every time you place a spell, which is probably a removal spell, to kill the other flyer on the other side of the table, now you have a 5/1 and you attack for 5.
Exactly.
And that's what's really cool about this card. And it's really defensive. It's got a high toughness to block any of the Ground Pounder, Selesnya, Rakdos cards.
Right.
And it's sweet.
One of the first, when it was first spoiled, it was first rumored as not having flying. And so I just immediately dismissed it.
Yeah,
I'm like,
5/1.
a 1/5 that turns into a 5/1 with no evasion, that card's terrible.
Like,
the instant it becomes flying, you're like, oh.
The first time ever Dross Crocodile gets out of the swim, he's like, I'm better than something? There's something worse than me?
No law. You're terrible. Really awesome, however, in limited.
Yeah.
In going anywhere beyond that. Goblin Test Pilot!
We finally got to this card.
This is my favorite card of the set.
Is it?
It's so much fun. I have never seen the most wacky, crazy. The art is brilliant. He's got his eyes covered. He doesn't know where he's going. And he's just on this rocket ship glider thing, and he just just kills himself.
And the flavor text is really good too.
Oh my God, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
The whole thing and all of Magic, just the community just went and half of them thought it was the worst thing ever, and half of them thought it was the best thing ever. And I was like, oh, it's so genius. It's just, who cares? There's a point where every Magic card doesn't need to do X. It doesn't need to win tournaments. It doesn't need to fill commander decks. Sometimes it just needs to be fun. This card is just like, I want to do some crazy stuff. We're going to watch the fireworks, flip some coins, roll some die.
I'll play this at the pre-release. That'll definitely happen. I think I'll be a little scared to put it in a constructed deck.
Yeah.
Or not constructed, sorry. Sorry.
I'd be a little scared too.
A draft deck at the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
I'd be scared to play with it.
I wouldn't do that per se. I mean, like if you're actually going to use this in draft, it's just a 3-mana O2 flyer. I get that.
Yeah.
And it can wear equipment, and you can put like.
Well, no, you'll have to.
On
What
it.
if you're playing it, you're activating it.
Of course you are. But all I'm saying, and what I try to explain a lot in the show, not all cards need to be everything in all people, and I want to be able to tap this thing and just see what happens. I want my opponent to be at 2, and I want there to be that crazy scenario where there's 8 creatures, including Goblin Test Pilot, and I roll the 9 to get him, and it's the greatest thing of all time.
I did think about the best and easiest way to figure this out going into a tournament.
Random.org?
No, that'd be.
Type in the number of things and just go?
No, I actually, because then you have to remember all of them.
Sure.
I actually think what you do is you just take the amount, you take a deck of cards, you take the ace of spades and all the other ones are just whatever, and you take ace plus all the targets, random them up, put one on each permanent, and then flip them all over. So they're flip them all over face up on all of them. I think that's the quickest. This seems like the most complex card ever.
It sounds like a really fun way to do it.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, or if you want to do it at home, you just take white blank pieces of paper, put them into sleeves, and put kaboom on one of them. And you just flip over until you hit kaboom.
And you're like, there's a kaboom, and then there's a bunch of other non-kabooms, and then you just
or whammies, like the actual old school whammy from.
No whammies. Oh, it's a whammy. That sounds genius. So it is includes you, in terms of the actual targeting, but that's okay with me because he's wild.
Well, that gives
he's
you
crazy.
Well, that makes it a lower percentage chance that your Goblin Test Pilot dies.
Woo!
I want it to be able to hit me.
This card is sweet. I love it. I love it. I love it. I
What
just wish
happens
it
when
had
you
haste.
just make them bigger too?
I just wanted it to have haste.
It should have haste.
Just wanted it to have haste, Wizards.
It doesn't make the card better that it doesn't have haste.
Yeah, it would make literal no difference to the card.
You're like, this card is busted. It has haste. Too good.
Yeah, I just want it to be fun. I just want it to be maximum fun. And to me, maximum fun is, I ripped it. You're at 2 life. I have no way to win otherwise. Let's see if, let's roll the roulette wheel and see what happens. Oh, so good. Malek, Izzet Paragon, created only because Ral Zarek could not be the Maze Runner, could not be the Izzet champion. Because he has to be mythic, because he's a planeswalker. So, you have Melek, Izzet Paragon himself.
He just exists because no one else could fulfill that role?
Well, I mean, that's, they were explaining, why does Melek exist? Why is Ral not the guild champion? Well, because he's a planeswalker, so he can't be. So technically, I think in the story, Ral actually runs the maze or something, but because, development needed to put it in blah, blah, blah. But either way.
Wait, what is the story? He's a maze runner? That's what they call him? Yeah,
they're the guild champions.
Wait, real quick, the guild champions, do they just put all 10 in and there's like a contest?
Yeah, it's like
Is
Harry
that the
Potter.
storyline?
It's just like Harry Potter.
No way!
And the Goblet of Fire.
I have to read this. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So it's fine. Send-ups are great. So Melek himself, the reason that Future Sight was so sweet was because you could just play lands to dig to more spells. And then Melek is just like, you got to land on top, sucks to be you. And you're like, oh.
I mean, but that's really cool. You can think twice out the top, and then you put 2 on the stack, and then you draw, and then you see if it's there, and then you can do other things.
It's a totally sick commander.
Yeah.
It's a sick commander.
Oh, yeah.
And one of my buddies, who works here, he goes crazy about this card, and he's like, this is the only card I'm super excited about from Dragon's Maze. I can't wait to build my, my awesome Melek commander deck. You know.
Yeah, I know.
You know. We know. He dresses up like Jace. It's okay. He's top 8 at the moment. All right, it's David McDarby. I'm just outing him right now. But David McDarby loves this card. He loves Commander. He wants to build an Izzet Commander deck with Melek out at the helm. And, again, no doubt it's a fun card. I just don't see it anywhere near constructed.
Time stretch?
I mean, even in Limited, do you actually, is this good enough in Limited?
No.
I'm like, I look at it and I'm like, it's a really expensive Pillar Philox.
Yep. That
you don't have a lot of instants or sorceries in your deck anyway.
No, and they all have overload.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, no.
All right, anyway.
A card not for everyone, but just for the Commander players.
This card is awesome. I like this card a lot.
I like my Wee Dragonauts.
Yeah, Wee Dragonauts was a sweet card. But it was a little bit weaker. I like this one because it's +3/+0, and it's a 4 defense on when it's when you're just behind. Right. You can actually deal with combat pretty well. Yep. Again, it's another thing. I swear to God that there must be this thing with Dragon's Maze that there's like a scarcity of centaurs. Like there just aren't. They do.
They're
and,
not
like,
around. If
and
they
like
are,
PETA had to like just say you can't kill these because
everybody gets
nothing
plus
can kill
1
them.
toughness, -1 power.
Yeah.
Now they're all pillar field oxes and they
Yeah,
can't kill anything.
We need to just like get the population growing again.
Yep. I like my Wee Dragonauts though. Wee Dragonauts was a 1/3 when you played Instant Sorcery, got +2/+0. So it didn't have Defender as I recall.
Yeah.
You could just attack with it. But the fact that this one is honestly pushed. I mean, like you play an Instant Sorcery and all of a sudden you have a 4/4 for 3 mana. You've already gotten value out of the Instant Sorcery.
See Manamorphose and then find something in Modern because we all know that I'm willing to play blue-red cards with Manamorphose.
Indeed you are. You are a betting individual. So Nivik Cyclops ultimately is really, really awesome and limited.
Yeah.
Will be a sweet card there.
There we go.
Zerek,
All right, so
the man.
I feel like everyone's polarized on this card. Like
Everybody is.
Yeah.
Everyone's, I think, scared, because you don't want to say that it's like crap, but you don't want to say it's like
Too good.
so awesome it's going to like own standard.
Yeah.
It's just really good.
I
It's
think
just in this little vein right in the
I
middle.
think it's good.
I think it's constructed playable for sure.
I do too, but I do not think it is in a control shell. I think you are going to play this in like a mid-rangey, like
Sure.
this could be like a Jund splash card because it lets you get to Siren Sending, Rakdos returns faster.
Right.
It also like the lightning bolts are more relevant in a permanent control deck.
Right. The mana ramp feature or aspect of this card, I think, is something that a lot of people just sort of glaze over.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this card takes you from 4 to 6.
Yep.
Like, that's big.
And
that's important.
And Farseek is like one of the easiest ways to go from 2 to 4.
Right.
So you can get that into play really early. Also, this is a control nightmare because it only takes 3 turns to activate. And once that happens, like 3 turns later, your opponent has to deal with it in those turns while he's also trying to fight your Rakdos returns and your Sires. And I like that this is a way to accelerate your Sire, also because it's very unique to have to deal with. So your opponent's going to have to do something unique to try to kill it, maybe tapping them out, letting you play your Sire. Right. So I like all these things. I really like this card in a Siren Sending deck because like once you take a couple extra turns with Sire and play, it's a game over.
Right. I think there's a lot of people, and particularly the new Planeswalkers, you just kind of like glaze over the ultimate. You just say to yourself like, well, the ultimates are what ultimates are, and they're cool and they're big splashy effects, but you're not actually going to get to do them. But with just 3 activations, like you don't need a ton of board presence to be able to play him, activate him, go. Play him +1, go. Play him +1, and then now all of a sudden you're threatening serious time walk action. That's scary and real.
And I mean, it also only takes 4 in a control matchup to keep him in play with the time walk, and that's brutal. Like if you take 3 turns, you get to tick him up again.
Right.
And you get to set things up. Like you might not kill a person, but you'll set it up. Like I'm really happy with this card. I'm curious to see what happens with it, but I feel like you're going to want to. It's a Izzet card which you want to use with spells, but I think it's more about board presence permanence to go with this card.
Right. I feel like, Wizards did a terrific job developing this card, and all Planeswalkers are like super development cards. Like this, and at least in my experience and my knowledge is that, a lot of designs, like they come up with a Planeswalker design. It rarely, if ever, I don't even know if ever they've actually gotten a Planeswalker from design to through development without some changes. But development's gotten really, really good at making Planeswalkers that don't take over the metagame.
Yep.
Like there's no more Elspeths, there's obviously no more Jace the Mind Sculptors. It's just like you get these Planeswalkers and you go, Like I think we all found out pretty quickly that Gideon was bad. Champion of Justice. It didn't, mainly because he couldn't protect himself.
Yep.
But when this one can protect himself and mana ramps you and lets your guys get through and gives them pseudo vigilance, and it sort of slices and dices and does these different things. A lot of people, they're just really shaky. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. His price is sort of middle of the road. His evaluation's a lot of the middle of the road.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to take one awesome Rouse Eric appearance in a standard tournament and just
blow him up. Yeah,
and he's just going to be sweet. And everyone's just going to universally be like, "Oh, I always knew he was great. I always knew he was unreal.
Yeah, I knew.
I knew that he was like just going to own stuff."
I knew in 2011 before they even knew it was a card. I knew.
Obviously, Wear and Tear is my personal favorite split card because of the elegance involved.
Oh, this is great.
Shatter, Demystify is such a beautiful, and they don't even have to change their costs. They just fit right together.
I also think that this is going to see a lot of play. I don't know if it's just going to see it in standard, but it's like one of those like sideboard compacting cards, and especially like the blue-white-red decks from Modern, like that they never really want to play Disenchant, but like they kind of they need to.
They need to answer like Birthing Pod or whatever.
Yeah, like they can answer Birthing Pod, they can answer actual enchantments. Like, I love this card. I think it'll be good, and it can blow people out if anyone's trying to play like later on, like post rotation when people are playing key runes, like key rune into like assembly, and you're like, lol, gotcha.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so I like this card. I'm curious to see what it's going to do, but it is going to see sideboard play.
It's just a cool, straightforward card.
Yeah.
That's what I like about it. It's like, it's cool, straightforward. It takes 2 existing spells. It sticks them together. You don't have to pay any sort of, penance, any sort of additional cost on top of that to get them all together like you do with Far and Away, like you do with other spells. And it's just value. And can't argue with that. Speaking of value, I love Turn and Burn.
Yeah, everyone freaked out about this card. I think it's good, but it's good. Okay, it's really good.
Don't you be hating on me. Card's sweet. Oh my God. They have a burn spell called Burn.
That is actually really cool.
That is awesome.
I don't really understand how if you just turn a Thragtusk, he loses all his abilities. He's like, look over there. And he's like, huh? Just dead.
Yeah, and his buddy's like, my buddy just wanders off.
Yeah.
I don't know who that weird looking guy is. Oh, so good. It's just the ability to turn off all these annoying leaves play triggers. Thragtusk and Angel Serenity are your 2 most wanted, and the ability to add another 2 mana to either kill them or 2 for 1.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that this was even an argument of like, is it good, and does it work, and is this good enough for standard? And I'm like, there is no question to me. I feel like there's just a ton of different ways you slice and dice the way this card works. You turn off your Thragtusk and you kill their Deathrite Shaman or something stupid. Like, it doesn't matter because the blowout potential is always there. The usefulness is always there. It's just a 5-mana removal spell at worst that never punishes you.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, like, the best thing about this card is there's those situations where you can never win, or like someone is like in an unlosable situation. Like, I have a Boros Reckoner at 1.
Right.
Like those things where this card can get you back from that, and that's what's the coolest thing about it. So I definitely think that blue, red, white control decks, or any blue, red, like even Grixis, had a tough time having cards to deal with Obsidots and Angel Serenities and Thragtusk, and those were like the big problem cards for them.
Right.
And now they have cards like Far and Away and Turn and Burn. So I think we're going to see the color palette branching out from just Esper and blue, white, red, because they can deal with things.
Yeah, I mean, I was even earlier in this video, complaining about how there wasn't a lot of options for a control deck in terms of removal spells. But let's face it, this is a pretty good one. Now, again, the pushback, at least on Twitter, when I was talking about how much I love this crazy card, was people were like, well, it's it's 5 mana, and like 5 mana removal spells not that exciting. Well, you know what? Wizards has been punishing the crap out of you for killing creatures.
Yeah.
Really punished you. Like whether it's Undying, whether it's Thragtusk, whether it's a Leaf's Blade trigger from Angel, whatever it is. And this card lets you get around all of that crap.
Yeah.
So yes, it's not as exciting as Path to Exile was in Conflux, but it's getting you around all of the problems that they have made for you in the format. And that's a big one.
And it lets you jump through some hoops. It's fine.
God, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's
Limited
really
and
good.
constructed, beautiful. Speaking of limited and constructed, catch and release is also.
So catch and release, for a lot of people, they'll see it, they'll see like release, and they'll be like,
It's catch and some other card that might do something at some point.
yes, this pretty much is just catch. And but the thing I want you to know is, like, it is not a threat effect. It says permanent, and you have to respect that.
Yes, you
Zealous
do.
Conscripts doesn't always get to steal Planeswalker when it matters, but like think about like a control mirror. Like, I don't think Planeswalkers are going to be a thing, but like they can be. Like,
Oh, for sure.
I mean,
They always can be. I mean, Tameo still exists. Rouse Eric is going to be
stealing
played.
Planeswalkers and taking out their ultimate is awesome.
That's the literal. I mean, there's no better feeling than stealing Tameo when she's at 8 counters with Zealous Conscripts and then firing off that ultimate. Oh,
If you've never done that, you've never lived. It's so good. Because the look on their face, they're just like, how dare you?
they're just like shocked and then kind of horrified, and then they kind of put it all together, and then they scoop.
Yep.
Because they don't know. So catch and catch, as I would call it.
Yeah.
Catch by itself is just, again, it's like super threatened. It's threatened with a cape on, and it's threatened that you always wanted because you wanted threatened to be able to take anything. Whereas release is just like, well, there was Razia's Purification, and if you remember that spell, same cost, you pick 3 permanent. Each player pick 3 permanents
sacked everything
and
else.
sack the rest. That to me feels like what release is
No,
trying
I think
to.
release is a little bit better than that because it's
Well,
not ripping your lands apart.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for what I agree, it's
Yeah.
better, and the bar was low. But it was, release is, it's a way to tie into catch. It's just that catch is so good.
Yeah.
Release doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah, I feel like release isn't going to matter until you realize that you punted 4 times in this game, and surprisingly, your opponent has assembled Jace like Boros Reckoner, and you're like,
Right.
oh, that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. There's going to be times in which release is cool because it does get you out of weird situations that you put yourself in. But I feel a majority of the time it's just catch, essentially. So with catch, with release, we have caught and released our Boros, our Boros and our Izzet and our red card review. So, ladies and gentlemen,
one more.
we just have one more. I don't know. I've had a really good time going through the set so far.
I've liked it. I've enjoyed
We've had
it.
good times talking about Magic cards.
It feels a lot quicker than Gatecrash and Return to Ravnica.
Strangely,
just a little.
It feels like we're talking about less cards here. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Evan Irwin.
I'm Brad Nelson.
We are going to be back here tomorrow, and until then, we're tapping the cards.
Oh, so you don't have to.
So you don't have. So you freaking seriously.
I'm sorry.
He's not sorry.
I'm not.